southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Tristan and Tony here with the Zero Duck 30 podcast. So if you guys have been following us, you know we've been working with the Huntwise app as far as our hunt strategy and planning and predicting and all that good stuff. And they're thankfully allowing us to pass on a 20% discount code to our followers. If you guys go and use the link in this description of this video and use code DUCK30, you'll get 20% off the Elite membership.
20. And why would you do that? You know, they only give you access to hundreds of manufacturers at big time discounts. You got a social media piece. You got all kinds of different reasons outside of the awesome mapping and prediction software they have. So yeah, check them out.
Heck yeah. So Tony, why don't you introduce today's guest?
Man, if I had a drum set, if I only had a drum set. Guys, we're so thankful to have this guest on the show today. We got Mr. Ramsey Russell, getducks.com. Let's give it up for Mr. Russell. Who knows about this guy going around the planet Earth and smoking ducks? I mean, he does it. And Mr. Russell, thank you for being on the show with us today, and I couldn't be more humbled.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank y'all for having me. I'm proud to be here. If you had a drum set, I hope you come across like Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
For a real introduction.
I know it. Yes, sir.
Oh, it was Alex Van Halen. What am I saying? Eddie played lead guitar and be Alex Van Halen.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
We'll have the guitar too.
So we got Mr. Russell here. You know, he just got in town and he's just been out there. If you guys follow him on social media and YouTube and stuff, you know, he's all over the place. And so, Mr. Russell, if you wouldn't mind, just for those of you that don't know who you are, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you into the sport and what's brought you to where you are today.
Man, I will. And first off, my dad was Mr. Russell. I'm Ramsey.
Okay.
And,
right. Fair enough.
Yeah, please call me by my first name. And you know, I really didn't get into duck hunting until later. My granddad, who was kind of my mentor in the whole hunting thing, he was just that guy that he didn't take you duck hunting until you were older. Mm-hmm. I mean, times have changed since the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
You know, at their duck camp, which was just a little hand-me-down plantation, a little old farmhouse, just a buckboard cabin in the middle of a farm field out in Arkansas, as I recall. You know, it had girly posters on the wall, and it was just a little farmhouse. I mean, it was nothing.
Right.
It was it would be a tenant home is what it'd be, and so they just didn't take us to duck camp at that age. But I grew up hearing those stories, and I grew up really in high school and whatnot, wanting to deer hunt, doing things along that nature. Still dove hunting, which is what I started with my grandfather, and went down to South Texas on the Mexican border in college, wanting to be a deer biologist. I went to Mississippi State University. I wanted to be Dr. Deer. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to, and boy, 107,000 acre ranch along the Mexican border, free range, Boone and Crockett deer, just unbelievable intensive whitetail deer management. And it became a job. I mean, whitetail deer management back in the day, killing mouths to feed, coil bucks and whatnot, kept you busy. And I never will forget, every time we would drop a disc to go plant a food plot, the doves would come just pouring in behind us. So every afternoon I'd go dove hunting. And then later in the year, from Thanksgiving on, every time the wind blew from the north, those stock tanks would get a few ducks on them. And that kind of just broke the ice. That kind of, I kind of like this. And I got back to school, and a fraternity brother invited me to go to Arkansas to duck hunt. The limit was 2 mallards. And there was a bunch of us in the way they did it too was left a lasting impression. They landed the ducks. And the first time it was in flooded timber, public land, Arkansas. Man, the first time a flock of ducks come in, I cut loose, bam, 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 you know, and the old guy that kind of led the group explained to me, son, you let me, very fatherly type, patriarch of the group. He said, you let me call the shots. Second time one come in, I shot again, and he was a little more stern. And he says, "I'll call the shots." He says, "See, son," he said, "anybody can shoot these ducks in this duck hole. Ray Charles can shoot a duck." He says, "But that's not our game. We want to own them. We want to own these ducks. That's our game." And so, what their game was landing those ducks.
That's awesome.
And then a kid or a child or whoever, newbie, let them take a shot at one on the water. When they got up, boom, boom, you're done. And it was an art to it that just, so when the limit was 2 mallards, I just developed this passion for it. And that's kind of the rest, be careful what you wish for. The rest kind of sort of became history.
Man, I love the way you said that. That's like that old timer told you at the time, son, that's not our game. That's a really cool way to phrase it.
It is. I've never heard it put that way.
Mm-hmm.
All these years later, what I've realized is just as recently as spending 60 days down in Argentina for the first time in a couple of years,
mm-hmm.
duck hunting is so subjective. Now, we send duck hunters all over the world, and a lot of times I'll follow up, or we'll send a little email follow-up just to see how it went, so I can keep my fingers on the pulse, see what they like, see what they didn't like about these particular operations that we've developed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it never ceases to amaze me. I can, 4 guys that are buddies in professional or personal lives, go and book a trip, and they go on one of our hunts, and they all send in surveys. And it's like they went to 4 different places. One guy loved the food, one guy didn't like it, one guy, something else. It's like, but because it's so subjective what somebody wants out of a duck hunting experience.
Right.
And that's just life in general. You know what I'm saying? And everybody plays a different game. And I'll say this I did leave college. I did join the federal government, first with Fish and Wildlife, then with U.S. Department of Agriculture. I was about midway through a government career when I realized it just wasn't my cup of tea. I had been asked way back when, one of my professors and I, right after college, booked a trip up to Canada. And you cannot make up what a horrible experience it was. It was booked through the, quote, foremost outfitter of the time. They're still in business under another brand. And it started that morning at 8 o'clock. We were supposed to have been picked up at 5:30, and around 8 o'clock, highly inebriated, couldn't stand up straight without leaning on his truck. First American that was our guide drove up and picked us up.
Wow.
And there was there was supposed to have been 8 people in camp. There were 30. The culinary highlight of the week was boiled meat pieces they call steak. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And I was just a little old federal government employee. I thought, I tell you what, I spent money I really didn't have to go on this trip because I wanted to shoot migrator Canada geese. And I did a little more due diligence. This was kind of before the internet was the internet. I mean, you realize right now, if you've got cellular connectivity, you've got more answers at your fingertip more quickly than George W. Bush did the day he was sworn into office.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's the truth.
It is.
Well,
It is the truth.
Back then, it wasn't like that. You had to kind of do some digging. And I was on the phone with an outfitter in Alberta. Went up there and hunted with him. Talked 3 buddies into going with me. The following year there was more. The following years there was more. And he called me out to drink a beer one day where the guys hung out. And he said, "Man, I want you to be a booking aide." And I go, "What the hell a booking aide?" "Jeff, I'm a forester with the U.S. Department of Agriculture." and he explained, he said, "I just want you to sell these hunts. And here, because, your guys, the people you're sending, you've talked to them and they show up and they know what to expect and how to tip and how to act and how to shoot and how to carry on. And I just think you could do this for me." So to reach more people back in the pre-social media day, I had this idea of a website. I thought about it, and all I had was one hunt to sell, and I was doing habitat consulting at the time. A little bit of forestry stuff, baseline reports for ecological stuff, and waterfowl habitat consulting. I couldn't find a way to make a living doing that kind of work. Mostly because people don't listen to you when you give them good advice. And about how to manage ducks. It doesn't take but one article in Field and Stream magazine that they become experts on how to manage waterfowl.
Man, aren't you kidding?
And so we but I did come up with this web page. A buddy of mine built it for free. It was a very humble web page, and first one thing and another, we're now on about our fifth or sixth incarnation of Get Ducks, probably the final incarnation. And it's turned into a monstrosity that far exceeds selling duck hunts. It's really I won't get into the details in public, but when you look at the back end of this website 20 years later, because next year is our 20th year in business. We incorporated in the year 2003.
Amazing.
And next year is our 20th year in business. We've come a long, long way. And but when you look back, the web page has really taken a tone and gone to a level that just is far beyond selling duck hunts. We sell duck hunts. We sell duck hunts, and that's been a very rewarding part. Good, a decent living, a hell of a life. But it's really and truly some of the stuff we're working on the back end right now is almost legacy level. It's like, for as long as the internet exists, I hope that some of the information we're putting down will be very valuable to people, whether they hunt or not, and to future duck hunters. And that's just it's become a passion project of mine. But that's kind of how we started and where we're going.
Wow. What I'm just, I guess when you listen to someone like this, you guys that's been in the industry for so many years, you think about where you're at and the experiences that you've had. And, I just can't even put my mind on what you've seen, and you're right. It's so many different pieces to the hunt, and I'm sure it changes for you too, time to time or place to place.
Man, right about the time I think I've seen and done it all, something else. It really is. It's like I started hunting in flooded timber in Arkansas, and man, I've hunted ducks, geese, and swans worldwide. I've accrued 120. I'd have to go look at my record. 125, 126 subspecies of waterfowl. I count subs. There's 167 species, more if you add the subs. And but a lot of the species now are becoming, they're in parts of the world that you can't hunt, or they themselves are endangered, or maybe even extinct. I went and visited an aviary not too long ago and saw some bears, poachers, and kind of like our bluebill, one of the poachers of the world, but they're probably extinct in the wild now. And but it's like I've hunted waterfowl at 16,000 feet. I've hunted them 400 foot below in Peru. I've hunted them at 400 feet below sea level in Netherlands. I've hunted them on 6 continents. Sea ducks, divers, gabblers, geese. I've pass shot them. I've shot them over bait where it's legal. I've shot them at night. I've shot them by light. I've shot them speedboats. Because the world's a lot bigger than our backyard.
Right.
And going back to that, everybody has a subjective experience. Everybody has a subjective goal. Well, everybody hunts different. And we I just had a really, really close friend and mentor. He passed suddenly.
And
sorry
to hear that.
he was one of the very best shots I'd ever seen. And I hunted with him up in Canada, where he'd been hunting for nearly 3 decades. He was a pass shooter of epic proportion. And once I shot specs with him and watched him put on a clinic at 80 yarders, I knew why he was the best shot I've ever seen.
Wow.
And it was just and I realized it's all about, on the one hand, shooting 70, 80 yards is sky busting. On the other hand, it ain't sky busting if they're falling. If you're shooting 5 times before birds fall, it ain't sky busting.
Right.
And, it's a hell of a shot is what it is. And a lot of the species you hunt are not going to work like a mallard duck. I had a guy ask me one time, tell him he wanted to go somewhere, I think Argentina, to do this, but boy, he was a mallard purist. He wanted to decoy like mallards and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, they ain't mallard ducks down there. There's something else entirely different. You get what I'm saying? You got to hunt ducks on their terms.
Right.
When we go to South Africa next month, a lot of the species that the guys will be targeting, it's more like a spot and stalk kudu hunt than a duck hunt. You know, when you find them, you're going to flat shoot them on the water. I've done that in other places in the world. These birds, you know, they don't fly. They don't respond. I mean, they're very territorial or very discreet or very secretive. They have no compunction whatsoever to decoy. You're not going to set up and pass shoot them anywhere like you can some species. It's a whole different ball game. That's kind of part of the challenge of it all.
That's amazing that you're talking about this, you know, and I just hope that we talk all night. But anyway, but it's amazing because I was watching one of your videos, and one of the things you pointed out in the video is how you were basically just following the lead. You know, hey, these are the professionals in this area. This is how they do it. And it's amazing that you talk about that, because a lot of times I bring up in a lot of our shows and podcasts, I talk about how there are professionals in different areas of the country that they hunt. And that is minute compared to what you're doing, Ramsey. I mean, but yeah, talk more about that if you don't mind, just some of the different strategies.
You get off into what I end up following the lead on, never guide to guide, number one. I have duck hunted a lot. I duck hunt a lot, self-start on my own. I don't go see puddle ducks my game. And I know how to duck hunt. I know what to do. I've been there, done that, with a lot of different species. I've got call lanyards hanging, for example. Argentina is real easy to talk about. I just got back from a 2-month trip down there, hunted 5 places, 4 provinces, 60 days, took my dog. It was an amazing thing.
Wow.
But at the same time, I got my Argentina call. I've got a teal call made by Joe Briscoe. I've got a whistle made by Matt Pierce for pintails. And I've got a mallard call that's been tuned for rosy bills that I carry a lot of different places. And then I've got a little shot shell whistle for calling whistling ducks. That's what those boys hunt with. But where I really get into following the lead, so to speak, is kind of the cultural lead. Go to Azerbaijan. Those guys hunt different over there. Very, very. They play an extreme A game. I mean, there's not a square inch of that little P-rose sticking out of the reeds. The wind's right, everything's right, the decoy plays right. They're expert callers, mostly with their mouths, because they can call all those different species.
Wow.
They play an extreme A game. We go down to Argentina. Some of my favorite experiences down there. I like to hunt wild ducks. I like to hunt ducks that aren't baited. That's what I want to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And we go off into some of these areas, and this one particular marsh we go to, when it's wet, it's like I can't describe. It's the most undescribable ducky place on God's earth. And when it's dry, it's tough hunting. I mean, we just got back. It was a dry year, longer drives, longer walks, shallower water, different species cohorts, and you had to play a whole different game. And but I enjoy that. I enjoy watching these boys take 20 gauge shells, cut the brass off, punch out the primer, hull it out, put it together, pinch together, and make these little whistles where they can call Brazilian ducks and whistles. And hunting in shallow water, we're walking so far at times, they're only bringing 5 or 6, 7, 8 decoys, very cheap, very, 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 very crude decoys, to which they add dead ducks. And to see a guy reach into a little knapsack and break out, a handful of 8-inch foot-long switches and go around and poke them in the ground and put their little mouth on to where it looks like he's sitting there swimming or doing something. It's real decoys. It adds a whole nother level of it to me. We have a lot of people say, well, I don't go to Argentina because I can't bring the ducks back. That's a fact. We'll get into that. You can't bring ducks back from Argentina. You can't bring ducks back from Australia. You can't bring ducks back from a lot of different areas because some of the anti-hunting stuff going on down there. But big deal. What I learned, one of the most important things I learned is I do chase species.
Mm-hmm.
I know I want to go back to Australia. I know there's places on the world I want to go to hunt a species, a bird that I've never encountered. But it ain't about stuffing him, because you know what? I don't care who your taxidermist is. Nobody but God is going to make that bird look as good as he did when he was alive.
Facts.
And I've learned that, but it's where that duck takes me. It's that experience, that cultural experience, that habitat, that whole drama that goes into the duck hunt besides the trigger pull. that just pulls me into the game. And so I was that guy one time. I wanted to collect these birds. I got a lot of stuffed birds. I wanted to have them all. All they do is sit around cockeyed and collect dust. That ain't the game. The game is where that species takes you. Is your relationship with that silvertail, with that rosy bill, with that African pygmy goose, with that bar-headed goose, with that red-crested poacher. With that mallard duck, with those pintails. That's the whole thing that I find myself getting into. And it's not just the people, it's the food. We got talking about food here recently. You go down to Argentina, for example, they eat every part of the cow but the moot. You know what I'm saying? So many delectable cuts of meat that we eat down there, like matambre, or some of the cuts I can't even pronounce, or the tripe, or the sweetbreads, just end up in the scrap pile in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just end up in a hamburger, and I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
In fact, I talked to one of my clients the other day who sells grass-fed beef, just real nice beef. And I'm like, well, can you make these cuts again? And he called around and said, man, not a butcher in the state of Mississippi knows those cuts of meat.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that's I got to figure this out.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's a shame that we're just eating a couple of choice cuts in hamburger.
Is it similar?
When you got all these great cuts of meat.
Ramsey, is it similar to like, when you clean your own deer and you get down there and you're like, hey, I shot this animal, and it's more so on a big game species, no doubt. It was when you're sitting there looking at the flank steaks and you got some rib meat and you're piecing all that meat off. It's the same thing, kind of the same thing as what you're saying.
It's the same thing, but there's different cuts. It's like the matambre is what they call the twitch muscle. It's like kind of on the outside of the cavity, a lot of fat, a little bit of lean. It's what he uses to shrug his skin to get the horseflies off. I never would have dreamed in a million years. I've been going to Argentina forever. And one day, in between clients, one of the wives' birthday parties, and so they had a asado, a barbecue. And they cooked some short ribs, which are tough, but very tasty. When you say barbecue in Argentina, they mean short ribs. When you say it in Deep South, we mean pork ribs.
Right.
They mean beef short ribs, and they're a little tough, but it's very flavorful. And they had the short ribs, they had sweetbread, they had small intestine, large intestine. And I'm like, I don't know about eating all that. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable how good that was.
Wow.
And but if you want to know, and that's here getting back on track. If you want a real idea of a culture, I don't care if you're in Connecticut, if you're in Mississippi, if you're in Argentina or Azerbaijan. You want a real good feel of the culture, put your feet up under the table and start eating what they eat. And I'm fearless. I will try anything once. You know what I'm saying? And usually I find out if I try it once, I'm good to go with it. You know what I'm saying? And I just add it to my whole lineup of things I'm willing to eat. And so anyway, that's just that's what I get into, is the people and their culture and their tradition. And I've got a hunt lined up. In fact, I'll tell them some. We work with outfitters worldwide, and a lot of the outfitters we work with, I don't own the lodge, I don't own the land, I don't own this or that. But a lot of the places we hunt, we don't function like a traditional quote booking agent. Hey, sell my hunt, I'll give you a percent. No, that ain't us. We ain't been that way for 15 years. Most of the hunts we've got, Argentina's a prime example. We've gone in and we've met local hunters, real hunters that don't exist on the internet or in the catalogs or any advertisements or at conventions. And we've gone in and kind of custom tailored it as a real American duck hunter. I know what you expect. You don't expect to eat at midnight, because that's what Argentines do, and get up at 3 a.m. and go duck hunting.
Right.
Probably want to eat around 7 o'clock and be in bed by 9 o'clock after 2 glasses of wine, if you like me. And but we go in and we more or less custom and craft these with the right partners. My Argentina outfitters and I have been working together for anywhere between 13 and 15 years now.
Wow.
And it's just like a dog, it's just like a wife, it's just like a girlfriend, it's just like any relationship. Trust is earned over time.
Right.
You know, and really and truly, it's when shit don't go right that you really find out who somebody's made of. It's in the dry years. It's in the tough years. It's in the pandemic times. That's when you find out what somebody's made of. And so after 10 to 15 years, you got a real good idea of what people can handle and what you're dealing with right here. And they've got a real good idea about what my wife and I are capable of. And that's kind of how this thing goes. We've you know, and then we've gone into countries like Australia, we've gone into countries like Netherlands, we've gone into countries like Azerbaijan, where those are three right off the top of my head, where there was no duck hunt until we came along. Wow. And went over there and spent the time and just what I call ground floored it. And it started. Right now, we're working on Guatemala, and that I predict that it's going to be certainly it's one of the coolest all-in total experiences I've ever been a part of, buddy. I told somebody when I got back in March, they called me in February and said, "Hey, we'd like to invite you down." So when you see, and then they go, they said, "Mark, you know, whatever." And I said, I had just enough time to come home from Mexico, drop off my gun, drop off my dog, wash a load of clothes, get on a plane, boom, down to Guatemala City, spend a week down there with those guys, and it was everything I want to hunt. I told my wife, I said, "Well, baby, if I ever run away from home, you better find me somewhere in Guatemala." I loved it down there, and really loved it down there. A lot of blue wings, a lot of blue wing teal, and nice. A lot of blue wings, some whistling ducks, some other species. But it's a blue wing teal hunt. But it is absolute cultural immersion, and that's what that's getting back to what I guess I'm gonna wrap up about GetDucks.com is. You know, after 20 years of doing what we do, first it was the web page, then it was the social media, then it was the podcast. It all just reinforces everything. But, you know, we don't sell dead ducks. Nowhere on earth do I sell dead ducks. I sell experiences. Mm-hmm. Dead ducks are a part of a duck hunting experience. But you know what? I tell people all the time, you know, people are calling asking about Argentina, and their first line of questioning is, 5-star la-di-da lodges. I'm like, you're on the phone with the wrong guy, you know, or it's like extreme high volume, and I'm like, you're on the phone with the wrong guy. That just ain't us. Right. You know what I'm saying? I think that when you start getting off into just pure D duck numbers, I think it degrades the sport. It degrades everything about duck hunting when it's all about the numbers. And don't get me wrong, duck hunting is a numbers game because of limits, but it ain't. You can't. I just refuse to let it govern me. In fact, a lot of clients in the last 60 days were surprised that I come in with the fewest amount of ducks a lot of mornings. I go to the side blinds, I go to the off places, and usually by the time I've shot a box and a half or 2 boxes of shells, I'm looking for a step off. You know what I'm saying? I've had my fill, but there's somebody that does it all the time. Right. I don't, you know, if I go shoot 5 ducks or I go shoot 50 ducks, it don't matter. My ego doesn't change. My sense of self doesn't change. What I think about myself or my dog, it doesn't change one bit. It's because it's not about numbers. Right. You know what I'm saying? My ego and my sense of self doesn't need to be propped up on the back of dead animals. Right. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not out there to watch a sunrise. I'm going to shoot the ducks. and I'm going to shoot a bunch of them and shoot, and, you know, but at the same time, that's just not the end all be all for me.
Man, Ramsey, listening to you talking, I think one of the things I admire about what you do is you talking about all these cultures and the experiences and stuff. And my duck hunting perspective is maybe a fifth or a second of what you're talking about. But what I can tell you is just from hunting Florida, Arkansas, Georgia, these different places, and like the things that me and my dad look like. We're not purists of any sort of type of duck. For me, it's about I like to shoot different stuff. You know, I'm not like I get people that are mallard purists and stuff, but it's just, and you know, in Florida, you know, we might be hunting close to the beach, and then we go to Arkansas and hunt in the timber or something else, and just being in those different environments and the states, I can't imagine what it would be like to do these different countries, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like one of our videos, we had to show some B-roll was, and Rams, you probably laugh at us, but we originally from Illinois, moved to Florida, then we go to Arkansas and hunt, and old boy says, "Hey, have you ever had chocolate
gravy?
Chocolate gravy."
Yeah,
and I go, "What?" We're talking in the blind. He said, "Oh man, if you hadn't had chocolate gravy, you're missing out." And I'm like, "Bro, take me to the smallest little greasy spoon in the whole county, and I want to have some of that." And we did. And man, as you're talking, Ramsey, I'm trying to even, my brain can't even fathom what you have seen and been a part of with these cultures, and us on such a minute level. It's amazing.
What we try to do, what I try to do via social media, and the name of our podcast is Duck Season Somewhere. When I'm in Argentina, when I'm in Azerbaijan, when I'm in Wisconsin, it don't matter. When I'm in California, it don't matter. I'm trying to talk to duck hunters, duck hunters, biologists, yada yada, to portray a picture. And what I really key in on are the similarities as well as the differences, because I perceive duck hunting as universal. We just all do it a little bit different. And that's okay. It's okay to wear something different. It's okay to shoot something different. It's okay to hunt differently. It's okay. I mean, it can be as simple as a Florida duck hunter versus Mississippi versus Arkansas versus Kansas versus Wisconsin versus California versus Washington State. You just pull 4 random duck hunters, all things equal, assuming they know how to blow a mallard duck call. The cadence is going to be different. The notes are going to be different. The style is going to be different, but it all works on mallards. See what I'm saying?
Right.
It's the same, but it ain't.
Right.
And that's okay. It's okay to be different, man. It's okay to do your own thing.
Right. Well, and that's kind of, and I'm not trying to say, and this podcast is about Ramsey Russell, not us, but that's what got me passionate about doing what we do at Zero Duck 30. I wanted. I felt like, as a 50-year-old man, I grew up, my mom was a world-class bow hunter, set a world record in Pope and Young as a bow hunter. And I grew up with that, and I learned a lot of the old school methods and traits. And I saw this gap, with the young people, and I wanted to get out there and show them what the reality of hunting was, because nothing would frustrate me more when I first got started was when I go on Facebook, I'd go on these different groups, and I would see dozen decoys for sale, these decoys for sale, my shotguns for sale. And I'm like, man, these guys, what they're doing is they're watching TV, and I'm not bashing TV at all. I mean, at all. I'm just saying there's a false perception of what it really takes to go out and duck hunt. And, I've always been like, since I've been young, just being truthful with somebody up front, and I want them to know what they're getting into. And what I find, and it kind of leads me into where I was going to ask you this, and we're going to skip a question, but we're going to run right into this, is Ramsey, you, with your social media posts and your videos and stuff, you have such a unique way of describing what you do that makes a person immerse in it. Where did that come from? Is that just a natural talent, or what? Man,
I don't know. Before I answer that question, I'm going to jump back to mallard purism. I got to tell you the story. I was out in Washington State one time, and you got to understand, mallard ducks, the whole game book is written about mallard ducks.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. The whole playbook is directed towards mallard ducks.
Mm-hmm.
They're big, they're edible, they're delicious, they're dumb, they decoy. The calls, the decoys, the style, everything's about mallard ducks. And I get it, and a lot of you mallard purists, you got to remember though, a lot of you mallard purists, they come from parts of the world that ain't hardly nothing but mallards.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't we all be so blessed?
True.
Right.
And I never forget one time though, I was out in Washington State. I got invited by a guy, a long time ago. He said, man, and I just gotten back from Canada. I had a federal government job. Could you come out there and hunt with us, take off a week, 10 days? Like, I ain't got a week, 10 days. I can't take off. He said, man, come on and do it with us. We'll fly you out there. We just need your call. We need your dog. I had Springer at the time. And just, I'm going out there with this old man that kind of knows the lay of the land, and we'll go do it. He talked me into it. I went. And we get out to the public land. And if we're walking out, people are waving at us or flashing us off, so we had to keep on walking and keep on walking and keep on walking. I mean, we walked knee deep water forever to get way out there on the point. When we got there, I realized we were downwind of everybody. And I'm like, well, this could work. they got here first, and we're downwind of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, work it did. And over the course of a week, we started gathering up wood, and had us a little bench, and had a piece of like a cross tied we found, and put it on some logs, and we were sitting on it. We had us a driftwood pile and grass around us, and some days were better than others, but all over pretty damn good. And the limit was 7 mallards and pintails, and so we go to eat dinner with that old man's friend. He had lived out there at some point in time. That old man was old too, and he hadn't duck hunted in 20 years and wanted to go with us. So he walked, and by then nobody flagged us off because we didn't even go nowhere near them. We went to our blind because just downwind of everybody. How they didn't figure that out, I never understand. But we just got downwind of everybody. Because the ducks were coming into that bay and had to come through us first. We got first crack at them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting there. I never forget this. And a big flock of about 10 or 15 pintails started working. I mean, they were working in tight, deep, 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 deep. I'm calling to them. Quack, quack, quack. I'm talking to them. And they're setting up. And the old man sitting in between Tim and I goes, "Are y'all going to shoot those?" I go, "Hell yeah, we're going to shoot them." That's what you just watch. I mean, they're coming right in. Look out there. They were just getting bigger, man, bigger and bigger as they were coming in that wind, getting ready, setting in them decoys. He said, "Well, I don't think we ought to shoot them because the mallards are flying." And we stood up to shoot. Bam, 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 we shoot. And when we look back, high five each other, all we see is two old man's boots sticking straight up in between us. He had rolled off the back of that bench. We stood up and was damn near about to drown. We reached under the water and grabbed him, pulled him up. He comes up gasping and blubbering. It's like, "I thought you were kidding. I didn't know you was really going to shoot them pintails." I'm like, "Hell yeah, we're going to shoot those pintails." And that just reminds me of another story. I don't know how shovelers became so maligned in America. I shoot them. Now, if the mallards are flying or the pintail are the good ducks, that's a last chance. You know what I'm saying? I was out in California hunting, and right off the bat, me and Big John Wills, boom, boom, we had our pintails. We go out to Sac Valley, California, you're going to get your pintail just in a blink of an eye. And we were clicking along about 9, 10, 11 o'clock. He said, "We ready to go get lunch?" I said, "Man, I am, but I'm sitting on 6 ducks. I just need one more." And I want to, I really would like to get a limit. I mean, why not? We've been out here this long. Let's just wait a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And about that time, a bald eagle flew over the back of the field, and must have been 1,500, 2,000 pintails got up. And we're sitting in a pit blind. They're coming over 20 yards. I mean, just passing by pintail. And about that time, in the middle of them, there's the old Drake spoonbill comes flapping along, boom, and I'm like, only in California am I passing on 1,500 pintails to shoot a shovel to get a limit, And but we got to talking at lunch about that, and it's so funny how a lot more people shoot them than don't. I've learned. And I'm like their poster child. I heard y'all talking to Stevie about the Spoonzilla decoy. That was a practical joke on Terry Denman.
Yeah,
a very good one. I never forget when I showed him that hand carved one. He was like, "Well, I want you to sign it." I said, "What do you mean you want me to sign it?" He goes, "Well, when I hang him off, I go, 'Oh hell no, this is my decoy. I've been telling y'all for years to make a Spoonzilla, make a spoon decoy." And that thing hit the internet and went viral. It went viral.
What was his initial name?
It was a carving that Jason Chuley made me of a shoveler with teeth and a gold tooth, and I called it Ramzilla.
Ramzilla.
And by the time we were in Mexico and we were coming back through Dallas, and Denman caught me at the gate and said, "Our phone is blowing up with buyers and public wanting to know what is a Ramzilla and when are they going to be available." He says, "We're going to make that decoy just like you did." And the rest is history. Become a Spoonzilla, and pretty fun decoy. And I got to tell this story on Denman. I just got to tell it.
I was going to ask about this, and I'm loving that you're going into it, because if you guys didn't see that video that Mojo put out a little bit, there's a little bit of history there between the creation of this and Terry and Ramsey. So let's hear about it.
I told this story at the late Mike Morgan's funeral, and hey, I'd known him since I was 19 years old. He brought me kind of into Mojo Wheelhouse. Terry and I have become good friends and hunted a lot of cool places since. But I never forget one time, Mike called me up. He was going to want to go hunt with the late J.J. Kent over in North Texas Panhandle. And I said, yeah, I'll meet you over after the show. We'll go put together a show. And it was just going to be me and Mike and the cameraman. First day we hunted this river and shot mallards and green-winged teal. And the next day we hunted a little cornfield and shot mallards and pintails. And third day, JJ comes in and says, man, I've got a stock tank, just wall-to-wall ducks. And but it's all shovelers. And Mike and I were like, that's all right. That'll be fun. We're from Mississippi. We don't care.
Right.
And so we went, and there were 6 of us. Dakota Stowers, who took over the company, is still running up there with North Texas Outfitters, was there. J.J. Kent, myself, Mike Morgan, and somebody else. And we shot 1 Drake Greenwing, else all shoveler limits.
That's awesome.
And we were cutting up, man. I never forget my old yellow dog brought in a big old boot lip hen, big old orange bill all mottled up, and I called it a spooning Crockett.
Yeah.
We were cutting up about, everybody dates fat girls, don't talk about her, like riding a moped, you don't talk about it with your buddies. We were just cutting up, and we took a picture of them ducks and sent it to Terry Dillman, and Terry wrote back and said, I will never let you two hunt again without adult supervision. And I laughed, and JJ laughed, and Mike laughed. We thought the funniest thing we ever heard. You know what? He never sent us on another hunt together without adult supervision. But it became, they named that episode Spooning Crockett, and at one time, maybe now, it was one of the most ever watched episodes of Mojo Outdoors.
Wow.
And we were because of the shovelers.
Wow.
And here's the crazy thing about it. When you get off anywhere else in the world outside of the United States, and specifically, or North America generally, now we go to Mexico, man, shovelers are the national bird of Mexico. We shoot cinnamon, we shoot blue wings, we shoot green wings, Mexican ducks, a lot of shovelers. But when you get off the North American continent, down to Africa, Australia, Azerbaijan, it's a duck. And when you show them that decoy and tell them that story, they scratch their heads and shrug and go, I don't understand.
Hey, well, what was...
Did we just lose them? Oh.
We just had... One second, we just had a cell signal fall between us and Ramsey. Might hit his ear.
Maybe.
Dropped you, man.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, no, you're good. No, you're good. And it's a good time for me to interrupt. So... I just saw a video of yours, Ramsey, and it was, and I hope I got this right. Was it a rosy bill shoveler? Was that
there's a rosy bill pochard. Are we still recording?
Yeah, we're going.
All right. Well, there's 4 shovelers in the world. You've got the northern shoveler, which we have. You've got the red shoveler, which is South America. You've got the Cape shoveler, which is the plainest, dullest looking shoveler in the world. Nothing spectacular about him at all. And then you've got the Australasian shoveler down the South Pacific that looks a lot like the Cape shoveler, but got like the blue wing crescent on his face.
Okay.
And those are the 4 shovelers of the world.
Gotcha.
Hey, Ramsey, I wanted to ask you on the shoveler topic. One of my buddies shot a shoveler in South Florida this year that had that kind of crescent on his face. And he was asking, like, man, what do you think this is? And I was like, do you think that's a immature duck, or do you think that is like a different species of shoveler?
I'd really have to see it in hand, because what you find happening sometimes, and I see it on now that social media is what it is, and everybody can post stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
It would not be out of the realm of possibility that somebody shot an Australasian shoveler in Florida, but that escaped from an aviary. I've seen ringtail, I've seen speckled tail, I've seen a friend of mine was hunting a big flooded timber hole on public land, Mississippi, and they shot a ruddy shell duck, which is from Asia.
Wow!
I had to go to Mongolia to shoot them in the wild. Wow. Now down in Florida, you've got feral populations along from Florida all the way into Texas now of Egyptian geese, which are endemic to Africa. So I mean, stuff happens. I mean, when I see something so far off base like that, now if I were to see a pink-footed goose shot in New England, that'd be reasonable. Maybe he got blew over from Greenland or Iceland or somewhere into the northern hemisphere. If you see Eurasian widgeons blown over into the Pacific flyway from out of Russia's not but 60 miles across, so that's that kind of. But when I see something like a pink-eared duck or a ruddy shell duck or an Australasian shoveler shot into North America, I would bet the house that if you look close enough, he's missing a toe or a digit because he come out of an aviary. That's what I would think. That's almost certainly what I would guess, is that something like that is an escapee. Huh. Not to say that it can't happen. Like, in parts of northern Argentina, we do occasionally shoot. In fact, I did not shoot it. A client shot a hen blue wing, and some asshole ended up, I it wasn't a cinnamon tail. It could have been a cinnamon tail because they did a lot. Because I know the difference in a cinnamon and a blue wing hen.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to show you the bill morphology and the size and everything else. I just know the difference. And once you've had a bunch of them, but at the same time, I had another client lay eyes on 2 Drake blue wings. Didn't close the deal. They were too far out. I kept hunting that area, never saw them. And those are birds that I don't know. Did they overfly to stop and stick around, or did they just overfly to stop and fly back to North America at some point in time? It's possible.
Sure.
Anything's possible. I've seen blue wings in Peru. Had clients shoot blue wings in Peru. So there's a lot of stuff like that can happen. But when you see something like a bird like that shot so far out of geographic place, you got to ask yourself, what's the odds of a shoveler coming from Australia or New Zealand to Florida? Probably not much. You know what I'm saying? Unless it was captive reared. So stuff like that can happen. And I think it's not to discount it, because, buddy, let me tell you what, I'd be proud as peaches to shoot something like that,
Yeah.
And but y'all were asking about the writing, and I really don't know. The hardest thing I ever did was try to write creatively and entertaining, because my background was scientific writing. And I was very, very, what got me out of a technical program like forestry and wildlife, were very quantitative, and I don't have strong quantitative skills. Statistics ain't math. I mean, it's just something different. But really what carried me through college was an ability for written and verbal communications, but it was highly scientific. By the time I was in grad school, I'd take some of those kind of classes that half your grade was a 20-page paper and a 20-minute presentation, and I would turn in 11 and a half pages and talk for 10 minutes and get an A. Wow. because I could so distill it. But that's very, very different than creative writing. And what I do, somebody asked me one time, man, what do you travel? How do you write that stuff? I'm like, you can write at a red light. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Or going into a restaurant or something, and it's just, I think it takes practice. I think it's just a descriptive ability and trying to put into words how I feel, and disregarding everything your 12th grade grammar teacher taught you, and just writing like you talk. Yeah. We talk, we don't talk like a sentence diagram. We communicate differently, and that's just kind of how I do it. I try to take a topic and just beat it down to a thought, just a single thought. If I'm talking about this bird species, if I'm talking about this place, if I'm talking about this particular morning, it's just try to sum it up in 150 words and its feelings, and try to bring the user, put him in the blind with me, just how I felt and the environmental conditions, that immersive experience, because that's what I think, that's the essence of duck hunting to me. It's not the dead duck. It's what that dead duck represents to the whole overall experience. And so it's just, I enjoy it. I enjoy writing like that. I really do.
The first time I ever read anything by you, I caught myself wanting more as I kept reading, because the vocabulary you used was very level and good, and of a variety of vocabulary when you use it. But you use so many different analogies or just very descriptive. It might be something like, the rain was dripping off the edge of the hut or whatever it was. And you're just telling it like you're seeing it. And I just think that is just so cool. And
well, think about this. Think about this real quick. Just think about this. Think about the last duck hunt you went on, or the last retrieve your dog made, or a particular hunt last year. And rarely does a dead duck stand out.
Mm-hmm.
It's sitting with your boys in a pit blind, and it's raining, and the ducks ain't flying, and you're sitting there talking like having a conversation you can only have in a duck blind, and there's just rain slowly dripping off the pit blind. And really when I think back to moments, my dog, it's not, it's her speed, but it's her shaking. She comes up, hands a duck, and she shakes off. It's just the little nuances. If you think about those little nuanced moments, that's really what speaks to us. I mean, I really struggle to think about how many ducks I shot on any given morning. It's everything else. It's the steam coming off of a dog that's been running on a cold morning, or the way a orange foot looked like he's playing a fiddle when I lay him down on the bench and he still got that little kick into him. Or
I love that.
It's just these little nuances that I think I try to. I think we all feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what speaks to us about the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
But I just try to notice them. I just try to, when I see it, I try to just remember it. You know what I'm saying? So I can speak about it later. Sitting out there, I mean, the sun rises every day. What's so special about a sunrise? But it is. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes when it, like I got this, I remember being in Argentina on this one particular morning, and I didn't make a post that day. My friend had died, and I was just thinking about that instead. But he was supposed to come down to Argentina and hunt with us for 2 weeks, and he wrote us back a few months ago and said he wasn't going to make it. He had something come up. Well, he's the kind of friend I'd call up and talk to every now and again. And I really wanted to get him on a podcast because of his story, and what he knew and some of the circles he ran in. And as I talked to him, he was a little upset because he said, I've got a cancer and it's not good. It's not bad. My family wants me to take chemo and this, that, and another. I'm like, oh, Dan, it'll be fine. It'll be good. It's going to be fine, man. And my first week after being in this particular place he was supposed to be, I just wrote, gave him an update. How you doing? How you feeling? He wrote back, this shit's real. He said, I just took my first chemo treatment and I've never been so weak in my life. And he said, but thanks for the update. Keep them coming. I'm glad y'all are shooting some ducks. And then 2 days later, my wife texted her. She called and said his wife had called and he died. And it just, but I remember that morning after I heard that news, I watched the sun come up. It was a long walk. I'm going to say it was a half-mile walk from the truck. And it was like walking in shin-deep Bermuda grass. And you could hear the shells crunching under your boot because normally it's a dry year, but normally when it's wet, that area's got water. And snails drive the ecosystem down there for ducks. And we went to this ephemeral pool. It's just sitting out there, kind of would be too deep to hunt if it was a wet year. And I was facing the east, and because the wind was right that way. And we were hunting a lot of teal and a few rosies and stuff like that. But I just never forget watching the sunrise play tug of war. The wind was blowing, and the sun would come out, and the decoys would light up all golden. The backs of those decoys would be just like gilded with gold. And then the clouds would win over a little bit, and the clouds won that day. The wind stopped, the clouds won. And but I just remember seeing that. I don't know. I just remember seeing it and watching it. In between volleys of ducks, and I'll write about it one day.
Wow, man.
What amazing.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Because you are right, Ramsey. I mean, I think one of the coolest things is that, when you as a father or a mentor of any kind, and you're able to help somebody get into the sport, no matter what their age. Obviously Tristan and I have been doing this for a long time. I got him into it before I could. I almost got a divorce for taking him out when he was 3 years old to deer blind. But the point is that, when you share these experiences with people, they're deep and they're real. And, man, it's so much more about everything else than killing the duck.
I think of it as my gospel. And I'll share something with you. It sometimes worries me is, I just recorded, we did a 2-part recording with, Dr. Rick Kaminsky. He was one of my professors at Mississippi State University, been studying ducks, quote unquote, for a half century. It's unbelievable the number of state and federal and NGO biologists that from coast to coast, north to south, Canada, Mexico, the world that have been his students, grad students, research students over the years. And we had a conversation that kind of hemmed around, where the hell are the ducks? 25 years ago, I was a young man sitting in your classroom. You know what I'm saying? And I could go out to public water and shoot a few ducks. It's tough now. It's very disheartening. And a few years ago, I was up in Utah hunting north of the Great Salt Lake up in the Bear River Valley. And we went and had cheeseburgers at a little hole in the wall, really good cheeseburgers. And they said, hey, let's go up there and see. Let's go up there to Promontory Summit and see where they connected the transcontinental rail. And if you hear about the history of the Great Salt Lake region, back when there were still passenger pigeons, back when Kankakee Marsh was still thriving up in Indiana, back at that time in the mid to late 1800s, the Great Salt Lake Basin was regarded internationally among duck hunters as the Valhalla of world duck hunting.
Wow.
So some of the descriptions of ducks, and like there's an old club up there I've hunted at now called the Chesapeake Club that was so named because they were shooting so many canvasbacks, they would ship them back east to sell them, pre-Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Wow.
And the Chesapeake Bay had commanded premium dollar for their canvasback. So this club in Utah named it Chesapeake Bay Duck Hunting Club, so that they could, when the crates got stamped Chesapeake Bay, they could get that top dollar. And we went up and saw, where they connected the rail that was going west, the rail that was going east, and they drove a celebratory golden spike. And as you talk to historians here in the deep south of Mississippi, that more the minute the rail came in, they cleared that Mississippi Delta, that primeval ancient forest that was once covered the entire Mississippi Delta, and black bears and panthers and all kinds of cool stuff. It was cleared, there were canvasback wars down in Texas, market hunting and stuff, because the rail brought in the public. And I guess what I just walked away thinking about, having just been there and just giving thought, you think about this, think about the cattle drives, John Wayne driving cattle with the young men, or that Lonesome Dove, that whole drama of the American West, Indians and cowboys and cattle drives. And if you really look at it on a timeline, it was only 20 years. 20 years. I'm 50. I turned 56 this year. That was 20 years that whole era lasted. And really and truly, when they connected the Pacific coast to the Atlantic coast via that transcontinental rail, American wilderness and the American West died. So when you see these dramatic paintings of buffalo and Native American, and that these artists were going from the east and going out west and depicting this hand painting of the American West or American wilderness, really, in hindsight, what they were doing is depicting the end of an era. Wow. Because it vanished in the flash of an eye, because civilization moved in. And I'm an eternal optimist because I'm a duck hunter. You've got to be an eternal optimist. And boy, I tell you what, the more crap that's going on trying to kill a duck in the deep south, the more you better be an optimist, or you never go duck hunting. You might learn to play golf instead. Mm-hmm. And it's and a small part of me wonders, are we walking through that era right now in the world of duck hunting.
Mhm.
Because I do not think that duck hunting can take the hit of what it was just 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. I don't think that if you double that from now to say 25, 30 years ago, I think if you double that 25, 30 years from now, we really ain't going to have nothing to hunt. And I ask myself, as hard as it is to hunt now, as few places there are to hunt now relative to 25, 30 years ago. I mean, we all know, ask any public land duck hunter, oh, there's too many duck hunters. There's more duck hunters, more duck hunters, more duck hunters. No, there's less duck hunters. Look at the duck stamp sales. There's less duck hunters, but there's so fewer places to hunt that it's becoming more concentrated on public land.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And,
Yes, sir.
look, the state of Mississippi, you have to get drawn for a lot of these quality areas, which means what if me and you, the three of us, go apply to go get drawn on one of these WMAs? If one of us get drawn, we all get to hunt.
Mhm.
What if we get drawn? What if I get drawn and you get drawn? Then we get to hunt twice, buddy. Twice ain't much of a duck season. How do you build a hand-me-down tradition with 2 or 3 or 4 duck hunts? How do you carry how do you compete with the immediate dopamine rush and satisfaction of a video game win or a sports game or baseball or something with today's youth, to drag them out and let them go once or twice or 3 times a year or 20 times a year where they only shoot one or 2 ducks? How do we continue to build as a tradition?
Mhm.
And where is the resource? Look, I just got back from Argentina, and that's a whole nother story about the anti-hunting movement rearing its head down there. The same as everywhere in the world, predominantly urban, more connected to paper straws than to the natural resources. There's a lack of duck hunting culture. Therefore, it's low-hanging fruit. Ducks are pretty. It's easy to move. Same as Australia, same as other places. If I can stop duck hunting, then I can leverage to stop everything else. I can build on it with my momentum, and that's what's happening there. It's happening around the world, and it's happening right here in our own backyards.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But we're too self-consumed with who's wearing what or shooting what or doing this or doing that or what brand product or everything else. We're so freaking SEC-like committed to these brands that are using us to buy their product that we're losing sight of the whole big picture.
Mhm.
You know, and I worry. There's times to me that worry that my grandkids, maybe even my kids that are in their 20s, won't be duck hunting when they're my age unless something is done.
Well, and Ramsey, this is, and I'd hate to even jump in here, but it's such a great opportunity to talk about it. Is I just listened to Billy on the Dr. Duck podcast talk about the whole wings over water. This is an epic film on proportions that we need now. This is something that is going into 10,000 school systems. It's an ecosystem that could arguably be more important than Everglades, and you name all the other ecosystems. And what is happening on this level is a huge thing for duck hunters. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
You know, I interviewed Chris Dorsey back in January. He is literally the Steven Spielberg of the outdoor world, an incredible human being, an incredible hunter.
Yes.
And I was so proud to see him move and commit resources into this at a time that we truly need it, because going back to my old professor, Rick Kaminsky, you know, there is a lot going on with the weather. We cannot deny. I despise the word global warming because it's political. Screw Al Gore.
Right.
Screw the people making money off this thing.
Right.
But there's no denying that temperatures are rising. And now, have they always risen? Hell yeah. I mean, 20,000 years ago, they now think the city of Atlantis was built in what's now the Sahara Desert, because every 20,000 years, according to fossil records, it's a lush tropical rainforest. I mean, the Earth moves at geological time. And weather anomalies and changes are part of it. I do not think that we are hastening it with what we're doing. I just don't. I think there's a lot more atmospheric carbon put out by disking soils to feed the world than there are from auto emissions. But what do I know? I'm just a dumb duck hunter, right? And but you know what's really happening in terms of habitat loss, and here's an interesting observation. I'm from Greenville, Mississippi, on the Mississippi River. I watch the Vicksburg stage because it affects us as the river gets high in the South Delta of Mississippi. They begin to shut off gates and do things to the tributaries like the Yazoo River to keep from adding to it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When they shut the gate on the Collins Creek, it's a tributary of the Yazoo River, that's a tributary of the Mississippi River. Because the river's high, we begin to backwater flood. So I watch the stages. How is it that between a third and a half of the United States, to include the Midwest, how is it possible that it's a drought? There was no snowfall till late. But preceding that snowfall that hit North Dakota, the Mississippi River stage was already high. How is that possible? It's possible because tiling and wetland drainage and shopping center parking lots and residential developments and storm drains, et cetera, on 40% of the U.S. continent that feeds the Mississippi River has converted to that water coming down the Mississippi River instead of sinking into the prairies. We are losing habitat. Look where are most of the big developments, residential developments, built on coastal estuaries because it's close to the ocean. We are losing it, and and we hunters all know that we're footing the bill. We are footing the bill through excise taxes, stamp sales, license sales. We're footing the bill for the only meaningful habitat. We North American hunters have funded, with the help of state and federal agencies and NGOs, the most enviable and stellar wildlife conservation model, the North American Wildlife Conservation Plan. Play to stay. Boom, we got it. Nobody else has it. Our recreational interest has converted into that. Mm-hmm. But the habitat loss is far bigger than we dwindling numbers of hunters can ever tackle. That's where a film like Dorsey put out on this IMAX production is going to hit these schools. We have got to get everybody, every non-hunter, every anti-hunter, every New York City urban night. We've got to get everybody on the hook, right, to understand that we duck hunters benefit from wetlands because of ducks. That's pretty selfish of me, but hey, I'll own it. I want to shoot ducks.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Right. But there are major societal benefits from wetlands that we've got to have. And we're losing it. We're losing it. And we've got to get everybody on board with this thing, or it's going to be gone. Look at what's happening down in the mouth of the Mississippi Delta, down around Venice, the whole coastal marsh, being lost at a football acre size. That much real estate is being lost per hour and just washed out to the ocean. Goodness. We won't know till it's gone what the impacts are throughout the Mississippi Flyway, the Atlantic Flyway, maybe even the whole country. There was a marsh one time called the Everglades of the North up in Indiana, of all places. Indiana had a marsh the size of the Everglades called Kankakee Marsh that biologists now estimate it was drained in a period of 5 years. It's where all that world record bushel per acre corn comes from now. It was drained in the 1800s, and they estimate that the North American continent lost 25% of its migratory birds when that marsh was drained.
Holy cow.
Goodness gracious. Wow.
We don't know till hindsight 2020 what the cumulative effect is. All I know is, as a duck hunter in the deep South, we got to have habitat. We've got to have habitat.
Yeah, and there's 200 species of water of different birds that use that 330,000 square miles, right?
I was down in Guatemala, for example, and a lot of blue-winged teal hunting we were doing was mangroves. Mexico, mangroves. We shoot a lot of birds in the mangroves down there on those coastal estuaries. And, some astounding amount, 30 to 50% of the fisheries in Mexico, which accounts for half their economy, originates in mangroves. Well, down in Guatemala, just a little bit further south, what you're seeing happening in Mexico too is a conversion of those habitats to shrimp farms or to salt pits. And it's just real world wow to see such a beautiful habitat that's so important for migratory birds, for fisheries, for clean water, just converted into a salt pit.
Goodness.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, goodness.
And it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thought. I'm so proud to see that movie hitting school, because maybe we can get people thinking about wetlands conservation. I believe it's a bigger problem than we hunters. We can't do it. We can't do it alone. We just can't do it alone.
For sure.
No, I mean, it's crazy how things get the buzz, and I mean, no doubt that we've all seen, especially like my age, Ramsey's age, we've seen a difference in honeybees in the world. I mean, you saw them everywhere you stepped when you were a kid, and you don't see them anymore, like you used to. But the thing is that you're right. We cannot even put our finger on what impacts what and how detrimental different things can be. And when I listened to that podcast, Mr. Chris Dorsey, to listen to him talk and the accomplishments that he's had, put my whole brain at a different level of how I need to approach this sport. That is one intelligent man. I mean, that God blessed him with that. I mean, he's a one in a million. And it's incredible that we've been able to take it to the stage that we're at now.
I've been southbound,